Hello and welcome back to my channel where I discuss fantasy Formula 1. Today we're going to discuss how my team performed in China as well as what my plans are going into Miami next weekend. We're also going to briefly discuss what my overarching plans are moving forward into the season, as I've had a middling start to the season so far. If any of that sounds interesting, stick around and we'll get right to it. To talk about the future, we must first talk about the past. And I know Shanghai and the Chinese Grand Prix is long gone for many of you in your minds, but we still have to briefly discuss what happened because it was quite an exciting one. I ended up playing the no negative. In my team selection video, I was unsure whether to go with the no negative and free transfers or the limitless. But I was weighing about 60% in the favor of the no negative. And Ferrari's lacking results, or just how slow the Ferrari looked compared to the McLaren, the Mercedes, made me question whether I should go with the limitless. And I ended up going with the no negative instead. And although the limitless turned out fantastic, I mean, in the beginning, at the sprint race for the Saturday, it looked okay going with the no negative, or it looked pretty good going with the no negative, as the Ferraris did not perform, and Hamilton took one of those top spots, stealing some points away. But then all of the top 5 assets that pretty much everyone had, top 7 assets, I should say, with both Ferrari and Red Bull Racing, but those were clear-cut. Everyone had Ferrari and Red Bull Racing. The 5th driver varied a bit, but most people went with double Ferrari, double Red Bull, and then Lando Norris. And that was your P1 through 5 once we got to the actual race. And they got quite a lot of points. So the Limitless was definitely a great option. Those who went with the Limitless can be happy about it. I went with the no negative though. And if you play the no negative and you saved more points than I did, I need you to tell me, because I've looked around on Twitter and I've not seen anyone have as good of a no negative as I have. So I continue to completely just dodge DNFs this season like I'm Neo from the Matrix. Looking through my team here, Carlos Sainz had nothing in terms of negative scores. Yuki Tsunoda DNF'd in the race, -20. Lance Stroll lost 4 positions in the race. That's another 4 points saved. Nico Hülkenberg lost positions in the sprint and in the race. That's another 7 points. And Valtteri Bottas lost positions in the sprint and DNF'd. And then no negatives for Ferrari, and then Red Bull lost 1 race position here. In total, that is 55 points saved. And it really shows that the no negative, you have to use it in a sprint race. I don't think it is even worth it if it's a regular rainy race at Spa, for example. I think you have to use the no negative during a sprint race, because when those cars race twice, that's twice the chance of a DNF, and saving like a 55 point swing with this new no negative is on par with some limitless, and definitely on par with the triple DRS boost, double DRS boost chip. So the no negative turned out fantastic. And again, if you got a better no negative than me, please let me know in the comments, because so far I've seen one person be close, but that's the biggest save I've seen. My transfers ended up being Charles Leclerc down to Yuki Tsunoda, and then Aston Martin up to Red Bull Racing. Red Bull Racing was 100% correct. They got all of the fastest pit stops points again, showing how badly you do need Red Bull Racing. But listen, okay, Yuki Tsunoda from that far back in the sprint looked pretty good, and I thought he could do some damage in the race. If he had not been spun out by Magnussen, he would have had a solid race and had a bit more points and probably risen in price. But it sucks that he got spun out by Magnussen, because my option was either Yuki Tsunoda or Magnussen, and I went with Yuki Tsunoda, and I must be cursed. Like, I'm cursing Yuki Tsunoda, because if you look at where can I look at him? If I can look at Yuki Tsunoda from this screen, When have I owned Yuki Tsunoda? I owned Yuki Tsunoda in Bahrain, -1. Saudi Arabia, -1. I sold him for Australia, 11 points. I sold him for Japan, 10 points. And I bought him again in China, -6 points. Yes, I got 14 points from him, but that's because I played the no negative. In reality, he got -6 points and dropped in price. So every time I've had Yuki Tsunoda, he's had a stinker. And every time I haven't had him, he's been the best of the rest. So I'm sorry, all the Yuki Tsunoda owners. That is on me. I've also gone without Kevin Magnussen. And I know this is probably a discussion for another time, but -20 for a DNF, and then you don't get any negative points when you get penalties. I feel like that's weird. I feel like the -20 is so swingy, and not even getting any negative points for getting penalties. I'm just salty, okay? I'm salty that I don't have Magnussen. He has been unbelievable in fantasy terms and very questionable on track. And of course, he has to be the one to spin out Yuki Tsunoda and completely demolish my budget. So if you're sitting on Magnussen, you're probably sitting on the best asset in the game. I've been saying that many different assets are the best assets over the course of the season. I still think Lance Stroll had a shocking weekend again, but he keeps rising in price. Lance Stroll is going to rise until 15 million. I'm sure of it. But at the price point, at this point, I'm pretty sure Magnussen is going to do the same. Unless Magnussen DNFs, there's no way he doesn't rise 0.5 every week. And now I'm priced out of it. I need to sell Lance Stroll to get Magnussen in. So that is very, very frustrating. But the actual GOAT assets is, of course, Max Verstappen. I knew going without Max Verstappen in a sprint race was doomed to fail. And boy, did it fail. The no negative saved me somewhat. But I'm not going through that again. Max Verstappen is more of a must-have in sprint races than Red Bull Racing because of the DRS boost. I was talking earlier on in the season, if you watched any of my first videos that I posted when the season started, that I was thinking Max Verstappen was essential because you could only afford one premium driver, and it had to be him because that was the safest DRS boost option. And then we sort of saw, the Perez, Sainz, Leclerc be close to Max Verstappen in points, and just having them instead of Max allowed you to have Red Bull Racing as a constructor. And since Red Bull Racing is taking all of the fastest pit stop points, you get the points from Max, and then you could also afford some of the more expensive mid-price assets, mainly Lance Stroll, who's going to keep rising in price. Many people switched to that Sainz, Leclerc, Perez with more the better budget drivers strategy, and that's sort of the meta we've been seeing. But Max Verstappen is absolutely needed in sprint races. You cannot not have Max Verstappen in sprint races anymore. The no negative has completely saved my ass. I will hold my hands up and admit that. But the points that Max Verstappen gets in sprint races with the DRS boost is too much to pass up on, and I will be having Max Verstappen for every sprint race going forward. Shifting focus over to the next weekend, which is also a sprint weekend, we have the Miami Grand Prix. Going into it, I'm sitting at an overall rank of 67k, which is still an arrow up from last week. I was sitting at 98k the week before, after Japan. So despite not owning Max Verstappen, that no negative has kept me on an upwards trajectory. The problem with the no negative is that it doesn't protect you from price drops. So Yuki Tsunoda and Valtteri Bottas both DNF'd, -0.2 for them. And Nico Hülkenberg lost a lot of positions in the sprint race. So even though he had a good race, in the sprint race he lost quite a few points, which ended up being below the average required, which means that he also lost 0.1. Lance Stroll again rose another 0.5 despite having a bad weekend. It doesn't seem to matter what he does as long as he doesn't crash. Him and Magnussen are going to keep rising in price every week. Red Bull Racing, Ferrari, Carlos Sainz did their usual things. But that's sort of where we're sitting at the moment with the outlook into Miami. And my plan in Miami has always been, or that's not true, but for the past few weeks, it has been to use my Limitless. Why? Well, I made an entire video on why you should have used your Limitless in China, and I was correct. Or Miami. It will be in the description, so you can go and watch that if you want to know more specifically about why the Limitless is so strong earlier on in the season. The other reason why I'm using Limitless is because I cannot afford Max Verstappen. No matter what I do, because of those budget drops, no matter how many negatives I take, I cannot afford Max Verstappen. Even with the cheapest drivers, it is impossible. And I say that knowing full well it is theoretically possible, but I'm not going without Red Bull Racing and Ferrari. The best I can afford is this, and that's a lot of negative 10s to get to it, and I don't have my wildcard available since I used that in Japan. To have both Red Bull Racing and Max Verstappen, I need more budget. I am currently like about 2 million away from affording even this team, and this team doesn't look that great, let's be honest. But I need Max Verstappen for this week. I'm not going another sprint race without him, or sprint weekend rather. So the only plan I have left to even get Max Verstappen in is to Limitless. The other reason, there are no other transfers for me to make. I have 2 free transfers, but what am I supposed to do with them? If you look at this team now and you're thinking, what can I do with free transfers here that would improve my team? I struggle to find anything. Because of the price changes, I'm priced out of Magnussen, so I can't do... you can't see the price there, but Kevin Magnussen currently sits at 8.7. So I'm priced out of Kevin Magnussen. Valtteri Bottas is now the cheapest asset in the game. Logan Sargent is at 6.3. So even if I wanted Logan Sargent, I couldn't get him. As for Nico Hülkenberg, the only drivers cheaper than him are the Williams and the Sauber drivers. And mainly, like maybe Zhou Guanyu is, maybe Albon is interesting. But I mean, the Haas is just so much faster in the race. And yes, Nico Hülkenberg is losing positions by being good at qualifying. But I don't think that it doesn't make any sense to sell Nico Hülkenberg for a Williams or a Sauber. Maybe Zhou Guanyu, maybe. But I would rather keep Nico Hülkenberg at this point. Am I selling Red Bull? No. It's a sprint weekend. Why would I do that? Am I selling Ferrari? Maybe if the rumors about... so hopefully there's no bad ads here. It's fine. But yeah, it's rumored, or at least it's said, that McLaren is going to introduce their first big upgrade in Miami. So maybe the McLarens are really good and are better than Ferraris now. Well, I can't bring in McLaren for Ferrari because McLaren is still more expensive. McLaren is at 24.1 million. So I can't afford that. As for Lance Stroll in one transfer to save something, do I go for Ocon and maybe Magnussen? Like, Stroll for Magnussen is the one transfer that would maybe make sense. And then I could sell Carlos Sainz for Checo. Perhaps. That's like the only transfer that even remotely makes sense. So every other week, I've sat there at the deadline with a sort of 50-50 decision, 60-40 decision, and I've been unsure what to do because there are multiple ways for my team to go. Here it feels like I only have one way. There's no way for me to get Max Verstappen, and the only transfer that even makes sense, and I don't even know if it makes sense because I do want to keep Stroll. I think Stroll is going to keep increasing until 15 million, and then I can bin him off for the rest of the season. So I feel like the only option is to Limitless. I feel like the only option here is to play the Limitless. What would my team be then if I were to Limitless? Well, likely the same thing as it would have been in China. The only thing that talks against using the Limitless here is the fact that McLaren are bringing upgrades. They could be faster than Ferrari. Maybe that's not a reason to not Limitless. Maybe that's a reason to go a bit differential and use McLaren instead of Ferrari as the constructor, running Norris and then maybe both the Ferrari drivers. That could be an option. So I do think there are more options for how to structure your Limitless rather than China. If the McLaren upgrade looks good, I mean the absolute no-brain move is Red Bull, Verstappen, the 2-time boost on Verstappen and Checo, and then it's just which combination of the McLaren and Ferrari drivers are you picking. But this team that I have here looks good for the budget increase, and I can then sort of look to restructure it in Imola and beyond. But for Miami, I am like 90% set on using my Limitless, and then it's just a question of who do I bring in on my Limitless. Do I bring the Ferrari or do I bring the McLaren? So what is my plan then going forward after Miami? I use the Limitless in Miami, hopefully gain some budget on the team I have in the back. And then what? Well, I'm currently sitting on no money in the bank. I don't know if you saw that, but my cost cap is literally 0. I have maxed out my budget into my actual assets, and my budget is not that big. I've seen a lot of people break the 110 mark already, and I would say that the average among the invested managers are in the 1.7s at least. So I'm a bit behind if you compare it to other players that are in the higher echelon, actually invested. So my plan is still to build budget, because coming up is the Austrian Grand Prix in round 11. So that is in 5 races time. We're talking after Miami. And until then, I need to be able to afford Verstappen, Red Bull, and Ferrari. That is non-negotiable. I have to have that team. Which drivers I have alongside them, well, that will vary. So until then, I'm just going to try and gain as much points as possible while also getting as much budget increases as possible. That includes getting Kevin Magnussen in, because I'm so tired. I'm so tired of not having Kevin Magnussen. He's been the bane of my existence in terms of budget. I'm probably keeping Lance Stroll. Let's say he doesn't crash, which is a lot for Lance Stroll, but let's say he doesn't crash, has bad races, and just keeps increasing 0.5. That would mean that he will hit 15 million after Canada, which means I can remove him by Spain. So in Spain, my most likely transfer, if Lance Stroll doesn't crash or, doesn't have any price decreases, my transfer would be Lance Stroll to any of the cheaper drivers. And then in Austria, have 3 free transfers available, and use that to get any Max Verstappen, Ferrari, and Red Bull team. Now, why would you not want to have a McLaren, Red Bull, Max Verstappen team in Austria, since McLaren are bringing an upgrade in Miami? Well, Ferrari are bringing an upgrade in Imola, a pretty major aero upgrade. So we can't know at the moment who's going to be better out of McLaren or Ferrari, but I still think it's going to be between them two. And considering McLaren is like the clearly third best team, they're also going to keep increasing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they also hit 25 million pretty soon, both the constructor and the Lando Norris. So who I'm owning, Ferrari, McLaren wise, it depends. I'm going to use these weekends going forward to sort of scout that out. But for Austria, the plan is to have Max Verstappen, any cheap drivers that I can, or that I can afford, and then Red Bull plus one of the other expensive constructors, probably Ferrari, because they're just cheaper than McLaren. So that is the plan. As for just Max Verstappen in general, considering the budget I'm at, I can't afford to have Max Verstappen, both literally and figuratively, right? I can't afford him because I can't bring him in without ruining my other constructors. I might want to keep with Red Bull Racing, but I could also go all out on the budget building and actually sell Red Bull Racing, the constructor, and run a team. Say Red Bull continues to be super strong. I could do Max Verstappen, and then like Ferrari and Haas, since Haas are looking quite good, and like they are going to keep increasing in price. They're not gonna all go out in Q1. Hulk might make Q3 once in a while. So Haas, the constructor, together with Ferrari, or even together with Red Bull Racing to get the most points. Something like this is something I could see myself moving towards, especially if the McLaren and Ferrari upgrades sort of levels the playing field, makes it very hard to see who is ahead of who, and they keep just stealing points out of each other. Then we will go back to that position at the start of the season where we thought that it would be way closer between the teams behind Red Bull, and it's going to be difficult to predict who's going to be the best DRS boost option, right? unless you're, of course, going for Paris. So something like this looks pretty good. I feel like these are the 4 best budget drivers right now in terms of both budget and points. And having Haas, I don't think is going to give as many points as maybe the Red Bull, Ferrari, Paris combo. But in terms of budget gain, this should be better. And Max Verstappen is just so good. Like, yes, I could have someone like a Paris here, but there's a lot of transfers to get to this point, and I could get Fernando Alonso, but at that point I'm skipping out on one of the cheaper assets. So yes, I'm gaining more budget from Paris over Max Verstappen, but I'm gaining less points, I would imagine, unless Fernando Alonso smashes it. So I can see myself running something like this. I can see myself running Max Verstappen as the actual driver together with Yuki. So something like this is likely what I'm working towards after Miami. It just depends on how many transfers I need to do that. Obviously, this is quite a few. This requires quite a few transfers, so it's not something I can just get to instantly. I don't have my wild card, but if you have your wild card, this would be something I would consider after Imola specifically. I think if you're sitting on, say you're limitlessing here in Miami, and then you're sitting on your Ferrari assets, maybe a Leclerc, Ferrari, Red Bull, or Sainz, Ferrari, Red Bull, I would keep it for Imola, considering Ferrari are bringing such big upgrades to Imola, and sort of scout it out. But then after Imola, if it looks like McLaren and Ferrari are really, really close in terms of pace, and they're stealing positions from each other still, something like this could be a really, really good wildcard if you have it. The only problem then in Imola is, what transfers do I make? Well, I could do something like this, and get Max Verstappen and Haas in as my 2 transfers in Imola. But if Ferrari are bringing big upgrades, it feels weird to sell them ahead of Imola. But I'm still stuck with 0 in the bank. Like, I still have 0 as my cost cap. Money's not going to show up there just like that. So I'm kind of stuck for transfers in Imola as well. I can only really downgrade with 1 transfer, so I could downgrade Lance Stroll to someone like a Magnussen, but I would want Lance Stroll back, so that's weird. I can't upgrade Sainz to anything. Maybe if someone crashes in Miami, maybe Magnussen crashes and I can get Magnussen by selling Yuki Tsunoda. That could be an option. But in Imola, I might be in a position where I just burn a transfer and just sit on this. I could also be, I was looking to have the Red Bull Racing and Haas combo, but considering I have to downgrade something and I might not want to downgrade Ferrari in Imola, I could downgrade the Red Bull and just upgrade say Yuki Tsunoda, or let's do Valtteri. Let's do Valtteri actually. Upgrade Valtteri to the driver I'm likely to go with in the future, say Checo. Run this in Imola, that's my 2 transfers, and then in Monaco I can finally do this and this, add Red Bull, and then something like Fernando. So I can get to that in 2 weeks, just boom boom, first in Imola and then in Monaco. So that is not too bad. The problem is getting to like the ideal one would probably require 3 weeks, so that would be my team for Monaco. And then the week after that, I can go in and get Magnussen. And if Magnussen is going to crash in Monaco, which you can't really rely on overtake points in Monaco, and that's the main reason why Magnussen has been such a good asset. So maybe Magnussen is bad in Monaco, actually. So maybe this is actually like the route, right? Maybe that's actually the way. So this would be my team for Canada then. And then for Spain, hopefully Lance Stroll has reached 50 million. I can sell him and never look back. Get someone like a Shoguan Yu in, or a cheap asset like that, and then prepare for a 3 transfer just blowout of my team for Austria. Sell the Haas because I would want to have 2 fast constructors. Maybe sell that, and then who knows what my budget will be by that point. Hopefully I could afford this if I add one of the cheap assets like Valtteri or Logan Sargent. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That was a lot of rambling, but I'm beginning, the first part of the season was sort of a bunch of races leading up to the first sprints. We're in the middle of the sprints now. My strategy is almost certainly going to be to Limitless in Miami and just pray that none of the drivers I pick crash. And then after that, we sort of begin the second phase of the season leading up to Austria. So the entire portion of races from Imola to Austria will be an entire big just sandwich of strategies that has to link together. Right now it's very race by race by race. I have no idea what I'm doing going into next race, but I have to start planning now because in Imola it will actually start to be important because I'm not gonna have the Limitless available in Austria, so I need my team budget to be good. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry about the rambling bit. If you also don't have Magnussen in your team and you hate him, leave a like because we are in the same boat, you and me. We can suffer together. Thank you so much for all of the views. If you haven't subscribed already, you should, because I will be continuing this throughout the entire season, and there's a big chunk of strategy coming up after Miami, so you do not want to miss that. See you later.